The puzzle genre was red hot following the success of Tetris, especially after it hit the Game Boy and NES. No surprise then that Genesis newcomer Accolade would choose to port a puzzle game to mark its console debut. Ishido features a very simple rule set. You are presented with a board divided into 96 spaces and a set of 72 stones to place. Each stone contains a combination of one of 6 symbols and 6 colors. If you lay a stone next to another, it has to match either its neighbor's color or symbol. If you lay a stone next to 2 others, it has to match one symbol and the other's color. It sounds pretty simple, and it is at first. But as the board fills up, it gets more and more difficult to find a legal spot for every tile. In fact, I've never placed all 72 of them. Ishido on the Genesis doesn't have a whole lot of bells and whistles. You can change the type of symbols and backgrounds in the game, and you can turn on various hints like indicators of available placement or peeking at your remaining tiles. Otherwise, though, there's nothing else to this cartridge. Ishido has an interesting story behind it. Originally developed for the Macintosh computer, intended publisher Epyx declared bankruptcy right around the time Ishido was finished. But the developers weren't about to give up. Programmer Ian Gilman describes the team's feeling. We'd put so much love and energy into the game, we couldn't stand the thought of just letting it die. So that's why we released a limited edition. The limited edition Ian is referring to was released in this beautiful Japanese-style walnut slipcase. There were only 1,000 made, and each one was numbered and signed by the team. It must have generated enough buzz because Accolade stepped in and signed on to publish the Mac and PC versions a year later, as well as pushing the game to multiple consoles including the Game Boy, Lynx, and Genesis. While Ishido is a bit of a low-key release, it's actually quite an important one for the Genesis as it brought another major US PC game maker into the fray. Accolade was founded in 1984 by game industry veterans Bob Whitehead and Alan Miller. Bob and Alan were alumni of Atari and were 2 of the founding members of Activision in 1979. However, they both thought, correctly, that the console focus of Activision was short-sighted, and so left to form Accolade. Legend has it that Accolade was so named because it would be listed earlier than Activision in phone directories at the time, much like Activision was so named in order to appear above Atari. This was a trend that continued with subsequent ex-Activision companies like Acclaim and Absolute. It was actually a legit naming scheme for many companies back when the main way customers found your business was through a phone directory. 30 years ago, there were loads of AAA limo services, cab companies, pizza places, auto shops, etc. in Canada and the US. Anyway, the impetus behind starting Accolade was to focus on the PC market. So while the NES revived the video game console in the mid-80s, Accolade made its name releasing successful computer games like the Test Drive and Hardball series. Test Drive, by the way, was developed by Don Matrick's Distinctive Software, the company that would eventually become Electronic Arts Canada. By the late 80s, though, much like rival Electronic Arts, Accolade knew it couldn't afford to stay out of the lucrative console market. And, like EA, Accolade balked at the licensing deals required by Sega and Nintendo. In Stephen Kent's Ultimate History of Video Games, Accolade founder Alan Miller is quoted as saying that the licensing agreement just about doubled the cost of goods to the independent publisher, as well as driving up the price for the consumer. Thus, Accolade chose not to accept the licensing agreement, in favor of reverse engineering the system and publishing its own game. This is why there's no seal of quality on Ishido's box, and why the cartridge is a completely different shape. Accolade's engineers purchased the system and 3 cartridges, and set up the console so that it would produce a printout of executable code used by the games. By comparing the printouts, they were able to discover how to disable the existing security system on the Genesis. The exact way Accolade went about this process would become very important about a year down the road. It would have huge implications not only on Sega's relationship with third-party publishers, but on the nature of the industry itself.